guys, I'm your host, Lorraine Sink. Welcome to Marvel's How to Draw Live, presented by Marvel Strike Force. In just a few minutes, we're going to be joined by the incredible Marvel artist, David Nakayama, and he's going to be teaching us how to draw Cersei from the Eternals. Now, if you've never had a chance to experience Marvel's How to Draw Live, you're in for a treat. This is a really cool chance to get to interact and watch a real Marvel artist create a piece of work right before your eyes. And as I mentioned, David Nakayama will be drawing Sersi, who is now available in Marvel Strike Force, the mobile game, as well as there will be an upcoming Eternals event coming this Friday. Let's talk a little bit about Marvel Strike Force. Cersei is available for the game, as will be her fellow Eternal Icarus. Now, Marvel Strike Force is a turn-based squad RPG where superheroes and supervillains can be teamed up to fight against enemy threats, and you can download it for free in the Google Play Store or the Apple App Store. Look at her go. Isn't she incredible? I'm so excited for everyone to get a chance to play with both Cersei as well as Icarus. And of course, the Cersei that we are gonna see drawn today by David Nakayama is inspired by Marvel Studios' Eternals, which is coming to theaters this Friday. I can't wait, but I can't wait any longer to welcome David Nakayama to teach us how to draw Cersei. Hey David, how you doing?
Hey, how are you? Thanks so much for having me. Delighted to be here.
It's our pleasure. And of course, if you guys want to ask any questions of David, you can drop those in the chat. I will be doing my best to facilitate your interaction throughout the show. Now, David, you've done so much beautiful work for Marvel. What have been some of your favorite Marvel projects?
Oh gosh, well, I got started with sequential art many years ago in the early 2000s, books like Marvel Adventures Hulk and later Big Hero 6. But these days I'm pretty much a dedicated cover artist, and that means I get to work on all the great characters. But I have to admit that the reason I got into comics and art in the first place is because of the X-Men. So anytime someone wants to throw me an X-Men project, I'm very excited about it.
Well, I have to say, I am a huge fan of your Hellfire covers. They're sort of in that magazine style. They're so cool. I'm really excited to see what you do because you are a multifaceted artist. You do it all, from paper to finished product. I can't wait to see what you do. So if you want to pull out that pen and paper and you can start drawing, and I will take questions as they come in. Again, you can drop those in the chat wherever you're watching or down in the comments, and I'll do my best to facilitate. Now, I see you've got a little bit of a sketch going. Where do you start when you know you're gonna be doing a big piece of art like this?
Well, gosh, so the reason I've got this pre-penciled a little bit today is just because we have a limited amount of time, and I really want to get into the nitty-gritty of the colors. That's where I think the art really comes alive, and I want to spend a lot of time talking about that today. But where do I get started? Gosh, I think it comes down to character, at the end of the day. If I was drawing Wolverine, I would approach it completely differently. I would, be looking for a bent-over action pose, something savage that really communicates who this character is. In this case, we've got Cersei, and Cersei, as we know from the trailer, is one of the thinkers in the Eternals, so I wanted to have an upright, strong, thoughtful, powerful, stoic kind of pose instead. So that's why I'm approaching her this way.
I love that so much. I guess it comes back to character always, doesn't it?
Always.
Now, you're drawing today with pencil and paper. For us, is that your preferred medium, or do you usually work digitally?
Usually I do work digitally. I kind of go back and forth. Obviously, I learned how to draw traditionally on paper with pencil, but more recently, and especially having done a little side trip through video games for about 12 years, I got really used to working digitally. So now, these days, I sort of combine the two. If it makes sense to start a piece traditionally, I will. And I thought for something like this, it'd be a lot more fun just to do it by hand.
Now, where are you going to start with Cersei today, since you have a little underdrawing to help guide you on your way?
Right. So at this point, my goal is to just kind of make sure everything looks three-dimensional and ready to be inked. There aren't any sort of surprises that are going to catch me later on. I want to figure out, the lips of 3D objects, for example. Make sure that her costume is, I'm not going to forget any important details, things like that. Any weirdnesses, I want to work those out at this point. So this elbow's kind of sticking out in a weird way to me. I'll fix that. I think we're looking pretty good to begin inking pretty soon here.
You know, something that I always find complicated, I am not the artist that you are, I will tell you that. I will stick to stick figures, but something that always I think is kind of complicated for novice artists is dealing with scale, you know, and you have Cersei's hand sort of jutting forward. How do you sort of negotiate what is going to be bigger in the foreground or smaller in the background? How do you sort of decide that?
I think that in drawing in general, this is a magic trick that we're doing, right? And anything you can do to make this flat piece of white paper suddenly feel like a three-dimensional person in front of you helps. So her arm coming forward is much better than her arm hanging at the side. It just makes that illusion that much more exciting. In this case, I had done it like a sample sketch, and her arm was not quite as good as we have it here. Here I've sort of perfected it. It feels like it's, you know, measured, not too extreme, feels appropriate for her. The last one maybe was a little less perfect. So I'm really glad we get this chance to perfect it here.
Now we have some great questions coming in. We have one from Twitch from Carolina_Blue who said, who is your favorite Marvel character that you've drawn?
Ooh, I think I got to go back to the X-Men there. Any of that 90s team has a real special place in my heart. So
heck yeah.
Right? I mean, people of a certain age, maybe my age, grew up with those Jim Lee comics or those or the animated series, of course, based on them. And so it'd be really hard for me to separate Jean Grey, Rogue, Cyclops. Any of those characters are so great.
Oh, definitely. Saturday mornings brought it home for me for sure. We also have from Twitch, Marvcito, who asks, David, tell us the drawing tools you used to draw for Marvel.
That is always a great question. In the digital space, I'm just working on Photoshop. That's it. That's the only tool I use. And I know the kids are really hip with Procreate these days. I understand that's pretty great, but my old ancient muscle memory restricts me from using it. It just doesn't work the way I want it to. So unfortunately, just Photoshop for me. Over here in analog world, right now I've shifted over to a series of Faber-Castell Pitt pens. I'm trying to get that in screen for you. There you go. So the great Adam Hughes once pointed these out as his tool of choice, and he is right. They are great.
I know, pens, I mean, I feel like everybody has to have a favorite pen. I know I have a favorite pen, and I don't do any drawing. We're getting some love here from YouTube. Ellie Artist said, wow, great contour technique. And to that I add, is there any sort of keys to adding contour as you go?
Yes, that's a great and insightful question. So what I'm doing right now is I'm thinking about, you know, that outer line, the key lines that define this character's pose. And I'm also thinking about this illusion of light and shadow, right? So in general, the light is going to be coming from her, you know, her hand is lit up like a lamp right now. That's going to be a light source. And also in general, top down, you know, like the sun, and front on, you know, like a photo shoot, those are your primary light sources. So I'm thinking about that bottom edge being the thickest line because of the illusion of shadow. So right now I'm going in with this M. It's a Faber-Castell Pitt pen labeled M. It's the thickest one. And on purpose, I'm getting those thick lines started first.
Well, that's a perfect segue. On Facebook, Isabella asked us, what inking techniques do you use for powerful character outlinings?
We're kind of talking right in that realm right now. I like a really thick holding line. It makes me think of Art Nouveau, where they purposefully had a really massive stroke around the characters. What I like about it is it seems to, you know, double down on defining the silhouette of the character and creating this interesting juxtaposition between, you know, knowing that it's a flat drawing, and then also, you know, contrasting it with the fact that it's three-dimensional magic trick that I was talking about before. So I like forcing the viewer to kind of see both at once. It makes, I think, the eye feel more engaged.
It's interesting that you mentioned Art Nouveau. You know, I feel like, comic art sort of takes so much from the world outside our window, including various forms of art. Are there any other forms of art that you look to for inspiration in your own style?
Definitely. I always say that, your style is just this mix of things that you love, right? And in my personal journey, I was always inspired by and fell in love with comics very early, but I also had this sort of weird side trip for 12 years through video games. And I couldn't help but pick up a lot of digital art techniques, so it just naturally became my style to combine the two. I like to think of my own style as a mashup between traditional and digital techniques.
We have lots and lots of love for you here. Everyone's really appreciating all that you do. Big Little Playas from YouTube, I apologize for that reading of your lovely name, said, I wish I could draw like that. And I'm curious, for about how long were you drawing regularly before you became a professional artist?
Yes, the eternal question. This is the tough part, right? It takes years and years to get good at anything. People have said you put 10,000 hours into anything and you can become a master, and that's really it. I don't have any special mutant drawing abilities like a Joe Madureira or something. It wasn't good when I was in high school. But I stuck with it. I kept working at it every single day. And if you're terrible at I guess I could say I was terrible at it for 25 years and then eventually got better.
I have a feeling that's not actually true, but it does take a lot of work. All things truly do. We have a comment here from Ashu on YouTube who said, nice drawing. Love from India. Thank you for watching from far, far away from us in the States. I know. We also got a question here from Alejandro on YouTube, which says, since what age did you realize that you wanted to draw? And also, how many years have you been drawing? Similar to our last question, but what age did you realize you wanted to draw?
My mom will tell you kind of right away. I really like drawing, and it was kind of just a matter of figuring out where to put that energy. At first it was drawing Garfield or something I saw in, the Sunday Funnies. Later on, 8-bit video games came along, and I found myself drawing levels for Mega Man for fun, that kind of thing. and then comics crossed my path. There were, two teenage boys in my neighborhood that I was friends with, and they had them, and once I saw them, it was just like, wow, okay, where have you been all my life?
Were there any artists in particular that you really were inspired by when you started reading and started practicing your comic book style art?
Definitely, yeah. It was Jim Lee in particular that really got me. So this was, I can remember it so clearly. It was like an issue in the middle of the Extinction Agenda event that Jim Lee happened to be drawing, and I saw that, and I didn't know that comics could look like that. I had a preconceived idea of what comics could even be, and then when I saw it, it just changed my entire understanding of the medium and what was possible in it. So, yeah, that was life-changing.
I always think it's so interesting to see what artists love. Sort of like musicians, when you hear a musician, you're like, what musician do you love? You hear like little bits of that style, and I think it's always interesting to know what style has influenced other artists' styles.
Totally.
So we have a question here from Ethan on Facebook who wants to know, who is your favorite superhero?
You'll never guess. It is Captain America. I'm wearing this shirt right now.
Well done. Excellent choice. Is there any particular thing about Cap that really speaks to you?
Yeah, I think what's great about Captain America is he is for me, the purest superhero. He's just a decent person who is trying, for justice. And he's not like, he doesn't have all the powers of a god or anything. He's at risk every time he goes to fight. So I admire it. I just feel like, yeah, that's what a hero is.
He's definitely doing it for the right reasons. Next up, we have a question on Twitch from Taco de Chorizo, which is potentially the best name I have ever heard. How did you get to draw for Marvel?
Oh gosh, well, I am old as dirt, and years ago, what we used to do before the internet is you would take these portfolios, printed versions of your covers or your interior pages, and you would actually schlep them to comic book conventions and try somehow to get some time with the editors who would only appear at certain comic conventions. So that's kind of how I did it for many years. I remember being at the Kubert School, and we would take class trips to go be at these shows and try to get that face time. These days, I imagine it's a lot easier for people. You can put your stuff on the internet, maybe people find you, but of course, the double-edged sword then is that you got to be really good and stand out.
I know it's such a different world where we don't have to walk pages into the office or mail pages directly from artists. Email is really great. Big fan. We have another question from Big Little Playas on YouTube who said, "Hi, how long does it usually take you to make a drawing like this one?" I'm going to ask additionally, for how much time did you spend on your sort of underdrawing sketch, and then how much time does it usually take you to take it all the way through color?
It's a great question. It really varies. It depends a lot on the character and what they're wearing. So some characters, were designed to be fast to draw. Like the history of Marvel is full of characters that were specifically simplistic in their costumes, and that doesn't mean they're bad costumes. In fact, some of them are the most iconic costumes ever made for superheroes. But the fact was that they were made to be drawn quickly. In the modern era, we've kind of gone the opposite direction, where the more pouches, the better. Or, in the case
especially if you love the X-Men.
Oh, and do I? In the case of Cersei here, I love the design work that they put together for these Eternal characters. They have a silhouette. It's sort of it's a tightly fitting costume, but there's armor plating, there's surface detail, there's a lot going on, and we're going to definitely get into it. But yeah, it really depends. In this case, because she's a little bit more on the detailed side, we can expect that it's going to take a little longer than normal, which is why I pre-penciled a little bit so we can get into it a little bit further for you guys.
Excuse me while I clear my throat. Ooh, I have a frog in my throat. Excuse me. I'm emotional. I'm verklempt. All right. I'm coming in from YouTube from Laura. Greetings from Colombia.
Hi.
I love how you draw someday. Someday I hope to draw comics. Do you have any advice for Laura?
Yeah, it's a couple things. The main one, and people get tired of hearing of it, but it's just really the main thing is time spent, right? Like, you can't expect to be good at something right away if you're me. There are a few rare mutants out there who can, but for me, it just took years and years of practice. So it's practice. It's putting in the time and just focusing on something for a really long time. But there's also style, right? Style comes up a lot as a question for people, and what I like to recommend, perhaps controversially, is just go ahead and directly copy your heroes. Just do it. And the reason I say that is because you can't help but have more than one favorite artist, right? Like, and as you copy both of them, or all three of them, or four of them, whatever they are, you're naturally going to start combining those references in new ways, and as a result, create your own style. So just go ahead and do it.
There you have it. We have a question here from YouTube. From, I'm going to probably say your name wrong, but Piaxim Makako, who says, Lorraine, may I ask if you also know how to draw, and who is my favorite hero? Well, I don't know how to draw well. I know how to draw, but not well. I aspire to ever hold a pen half as well as David.
Shucks.
I do truly feel like watching somebody draw is magic to me, because it's just not a skill that I have cultivated. but I just think it must be the most amazing thing in the world to sit down and create something from your mind or from some sort of internal inspiration. So I have so much respect for what you all do. Also, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of time and work and effort. And as far as my favorite hero, I have so many, but I would normally go with Squirrel Girl.
Yay!
I feel like we got a similar vibe going on. She's got good empathy. She's adorable. She kicks butts. She eats nuts. She has an animal friend. What's not to love, you know? Next up, we have a question from YouTube from Ronald, who says, which character is your favorite villain?
Ooh, boy, favorite villain. I honestly don't think I've been asked that before.
Really?
Yeah, no, people always care about the heroes, and very rarely do you get commissioned to draw the villains. So, wow. I guess it depends, you know, like in a lot of cases, the villains are gray now, you know, morally gray, or have outright become heroes. Can I say Emma Frost? Can I say Mystique? Like, they were incredible villains once.
Yeah, well, you know, I think that's something that I love about our characters is our heroes make mistakes and do bad things sometimes, and our villains sometimes do good things. You know, everybody's sort of the hero of their own story in their own way, but I think Mystique especially counts.
Yeah.
Emma Frost, it depends on what side of the Scott Jean debate you're on, I think, these days. I'll always vote for Jean. Sorry, don't Frost fans, don't come for me. I don't need the fight. Now I see here that you're inking in quite a bit of her hair. What's the sort of trick to, like, you know, doing a fair amount of inking, but also keeping some dimension and shape?
Well, here's the funny thing. Like, right now, it is not going to look great. I know this from experience. Like, it's going to look plain and boring. And what I know is going to happen eventually is I'll go in with a white pen and pick out some interesting details that restore the body of the hair at the end. So I just have to be patient and wait for that moment. Until then, it's not going to look awesome, but yet we're putting in the foundation for this art right now. So we've got more or less the outline complete, and now I'm spotting the blacks. Soon after that, we'll get into colors, which might surprise some people. I won't be finishing the inking. I'll be doing the colors first.
Really?
Yeah.
Why do you do that?
Well, I guess I can explain right now. So the reason being is that sometimes the work can get done in the color phase and then not really require the lines anymore. You know what I mean? Like, sometimes you can spend a lot of time doing those inking moves, and then when you color over it, it just sort of disappears compositionally and it's not really useful anymore. The other reason is that when you're drawing analog, as we are today, sometimes the colors can actually diminish the amount that you can see the inks. They just sort of, the alcohol in the pens melts the inks and you can't really see it anymore. So for those two reasons, it seems to make most sense to drop in those base colors first. Unfortunately, you can still see the pencil, so no harm done.
Amazing. I had no idea. Speaking of these excellent tips from YouTube, we have Shade Comics, who would love to know if you have any tips for aspiring comic creators.
Yes, the main rule still stands. I mean, if there's a theme of today's TED Talk, is that you have to practice. You really just, there's no substitute for practice. I might add that the great Frank Joe once said that he had to copy, or he at least recommended to people to copy artist anatomy books cover to cover twice, in order to get that information into your brain. There's no matrix. We can't just insert that knowledge into our brain, so we have to actually do the hard work of this sort of repetitive, not so fun, art practice.
It all comes back to lots and lots of hard work.
Yeah. But I don't want to be a huge downer. Like, one thing that is fun is so often you will feel that moment where you level up. You'll be like, I understand this now. And then forever afterwards, you'll have that trick. And over time, you collect more and more of those tricks, and that's fun. That feels great. That feels like you're really making progress.
Yeah, you've beat the anatomy boss level. You've ascended to the next level. Next up from Twitch, Dro Slice would like to know, do you prefer drawing character scenes or big action set pieces more?
I guess I gotta go character. I mean, if you look at my body of work, I'm not known for the George Perez, 65 character Avengers layout necessarily. I'm not opposed to it, but it's not typically what I do. What I really like to do is get into insane detail for one character. A lot of my covers really get in close on one character to the point where we can see the texture in the leather or something like that. That stuff really gets me excited.
We have another question along the same lines. How should I learn to draw characters in different positions? I always draw them looking straight.
Great question. Yes, now you're getting at it. You're right there. The way to do that is you need to learn to invent the character, and what I mean by that is to understand, to make, like to imagine the puppet of a character in your head. So imagine limbs as tubes, or the shape of the skull as a sphere. Understand those things and then be able to manipulate them in your head. There is no better book for this than Figure Drawing for All It's Worth by Andrew Loomis, who is a Golden Age illustrator, and that book was my Bible, and many others as well. Also, I would add more controversial opinions from David about drawing, but
we're changing the name of the segment.
Right? So always you hear like, oh, in order to draw people, you need to take life drawing classes. No, do not do that. That's great for learning lyricism in your drawing, making things feel natural and smooth and stuff, but you will never learn the underlying anatomy about how the body works by doing life drawing. You'll never understand it. You can't see it. Things change so fluidly under the skin as our bodies move that you'll never figure it out. So what you need instead is an artist's anatomy book, such as Figure Drawing for All It's Worth, or The Human Figure by David Rubens. Those two, I think, are my two standbys, where you can actually see like where the muscles insert and how they're actually laid out against the bones, which is, at the end of the day, those two things in combination, manipulating the model of the figure in your head and knowing where bones and muscles go, that's the only way you're going to be able to manipulate the figure any way you want and not just do that straightforward pose.
Oh, David, you're a fount of knowledge, and you're making some really beautiful headway here with Cersei from the Eternals. If you're just joining us, you're watching Marvel's How to Draw Live, presented by Marvel Strike Force, and our wonderful Marvel artist, David Nakayama, is drawing Sersi, inspired by Marvel Studios' Eternals, which is coming only to theaters this Friday, and she'll be available in Marvel Strike Force, the mobile game that you can download for free on the Google Play Store or on the Apple App Store. Now, David, you're making such beautiful headway. I think we're going to take a moment to just watch you draw, and fill in some color and to enjoy. We'll be with you here in just a moment.
Sounds great.
Hey Marvelites, you're watching Marvel's How to Draw Live. Lorraine here with David Nakayama, who is currently working on Cersei in her costume from Marvel Strike Force, where she's now available in the game. Of course, she's inspired by Marvel Studios' Eternals, which is coming to theaters this Friday. Let's talk a little bit about the film Marvel Studios' Eternals. I really am so excited for everyone to go out, get your tickets, go see it this weekend. I think people are going to really love a chance to get to see it up on the big screen. David, did you get to peep any of these trailers? Are you ready to go?
I am so ready. I've been excited about this project since basically the moment it was announced, because I like a lot of the actors in it. Pretty much. I know a lot of these guys from other things, and to have them all in one show is sort of amazing. If nothing else, I mean, it's going to be incredible to see Kumail Nanjiani do this Bollywood scene. That alone has me very excited.
I can't wait. I can't wait. Now, the Eternals, of course, are heroes from beyond the stars who have protected Earth since the dawn of humankind. And Sersi, of course, who David is drawing right now, is one of the Eternals. The Eternals are a group of ancient immortal beings who work on behalf of the Celestials, who are the architects of existence. And the Celestials sent the Eternals to Earth to protect humankind from dangerous creatures called the Deviants. As for Cersei's powers in fighting with the Deviants, she has the ability to manipulate matter. She can change the makeup of any sort of non-sentient matter with just a touch, which I love this dynamic pose that shows off a little bit of her power there. And Cersei, of course, over the centuries has really fallen in love with humanity. And we see her in the present as a museum curator, which I think is very appropriate for the love of humanity. And of course, she's been close with her fellow Eternal Icarus. And so when the Deviants reappear, they will have to regather the team and take on one last mission as the Eternals. Be sure to go and get your tickets to Marvel Studios' Eternals, coming only to theaters starting this Friday. I cannot wait. It's been so fun to see all of the buzz and excitement for this film. And of course, David Nakayama is drawing Cersei right now in her costume, which will appear in Marvel Strike Force. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. Keep them coming. I'll do my best to facilitate them over to David as he continues this beautiful drawing. It's coming together so well. How do you decide where you're going to use sort of the darker shades of green versus the lighter shades of green?
Oh, yeah, great question again. So in a way, I'm thinking about anime, if I'm honest. They have that style where, in order to even make it, to be able to produce it on time, they have to have a simplified style where you get two colors. There's a dark and a light, and how do you drop that in? And the answer is they're thinking about light source. What is going to be on the opposite of the light source versus what is in the light source. So you can see these little patches of white that I'm leaving in here. These are meant to be the specular sheens of where the light would be hitting the hardest. Although, I mean, like some of these things are going to be gray. That's part of costume. But this, and this are specular. That's just meant to be the shine on this sort of semi-metallic material that she's wearing on her armor. But you may have seen that the first thing I laid in was those darks. I like kind of establishing the basic shadows first, and then what we're doing right now is just sort of a general fill of middle green. I'll go back with some grays to get the nuances between them toward the end.
It's looking lovely. We have a question here from Twitch from Orego25. Hi, David, here from Argentina, South America.
Hello.
Yeah, it is interesting to see how you do not use a brush for inking, especially when we see a lot of brush in our favorite artists. You don't like to use a brush, or is it a matter of technique only, or which?
Brush inking is gorgeous. Don't get me wrong, I do enjoy it, but the reality is it's slow, and it's also potentially really messy. If you have a spill, there's the end of your piece right there.
Ooh, yeah.
It's happened to us all, and it's no fun. You get spoiled sometimes working in digital because that'll never happen. You have a handy undo button at any time, and all these, little tools that help you make small fixes along the way. It's hard to resist that. So when I'm doing traditional, I'm trying to replicate that sort of feeling of not having a lot of potential downside of also trying to get it done quickly under a certain amount of time. That's the reason I don't do brush. If I had all the time in the world, you're absolutely right. Brush is beautiful. And some artists can actually make it work very quickly and get that good look. But it's just not the way I've developed myself.
I imagine it would be very sad if on this live stream a brush went flying or a little inkwell. On YouTube, Captain Ace is asking, hi, what kind of markers are you using? And your drawing looks great.
Thank you so much. So it is a combination. Right now I happen to be using Prismacolors, which I just got used to from school. But equally, I like Copics. So when we get into skin tones in particular, those Copics and the way that they blend a little better than Prismacolors is going to come in handy. On something hard surface and specular like her armor, it makes sense to kind of lean in toward that anime, cut color style. But when I get into the face, that wouldn't quite work. It would be a little too hard, I think, for my taste. So I'll be switching to Copics at that point.
There you have it. Over on YouTube, Ronald is asking, are there any tips or words of wisdom about drawing that you wished that you had known when you first started drawing as an artist?
You have come to the right place. I've been trying to fit in as many of them as possible throughout this entire broadcast. What I wish I knew is, just keep going. Know, what is useful to your, artistic improvement and what is not. I went into, I've taken a million life drawing classes and I learned very little that has actually helped me be a professional artist. Controversial opinion, I know, but for me that just wasn't useful to my development. I had a great little nugget I was going to share, and it has completely fallen out of my brain. Maybe later.
That's okay. You have more time. We definitely have more time to, as you fill in things, you can also fill in the gaps of what you might have forgot to say.
There we go.
We have a question here from YouTube from Infinite Road who says, when you draw backgrounds in comics or somewhere, how difficult is it for you? Different complex backgrounds seem to be really exhausting to draw.
They are. It's no joke. It is really important in comics to have them. I mean, you can't really tell a story without it. So it's really important. And it's kind of a miracle, like what comic artists can do. A lot of people have made a comparison between all the hats a comic artist wear compared to jobs on a film set. So you are the prop master, you are the costume designer, you are the director of photography. You're doing so many things, and it is really hard. I can't underscore enough how important it is to create great backgrounds and stuff. If I had more time, maybe I would be adding more background in this drawing. But you have to pick and choose. You can't draw New York City in every panel of every comic. So I guess use it to be strategic about when you're doing it.
Well, it's kind of an interesting thing, right? Because obviously you've done interiors, but you've done so many covers, especially for us recently. What's sort of the big difference between working on interior comic book art versus doing a cover where you're doing the whole shebang?
Yeah, it's there are a lot of similarities, but there are also some differences. Like in both cases, you are trying to tell a story. Even the cover is a story, but there's not that you only get one image with a cover, so that's the essential difference. You're not going to be able to have a character changing and evolving over time. You just get this one moment to make the biggest punch you can. So we're given a lecture on the topic of covers at a Comic-Con one time, and kind of what it comes down to is, you have all these tools to make a cover stand out, right? Like you want to engage the reader or the viewer not just with great draftsmanship. That's part of it, of course. The drawing itself and how good the quality is a part of it, but it's not everything. There is also, what are you making the viewer feel? Have you made them laugh? Did you scare them? Did you, is there some kind of visual gimmick that makes their brain go, wow, what's going on there? Think Escher or Patrick Nagel or something like that. You're doing something just in the style itself that makes the viewer go, wow, what is that? Oh, wow, okay, I've just had a bleed. Awesome. We're going to shift pens now. And now we'll get to see how I clean that up later. Extra bonus lesson.
I think that's the perfect time to take a little closer look, as you show us how to work around what you're doing here and filling in some of the skin tone.
Okay. So I was talking a little bit about Copics and their blending ability. I am laying down that sort of darker shade, like I mentioned before. Nice to start with darks. And what's really cool about these markers in particular that the Prismas don't do is when I put them together, they seem to melt and flow into each other in a really cool way. So when I get to that second color, you'll see them kind of combining where you can't see the edges between them. And that works really great for something soft like skin tone. But where I'm actually putting the colors is much the same process as we saw with the greens. This is another one of those times where things don't look great right away. You have to be patient and know that it's all going to come together in the end. These little bits of darkness look extreme. It looks like she's overlit right now. But I know that eventually it will all work out. I don't know if you can see, but that process I'm talking about before of the colors flowing into each other is happening right here. So these over hard edges that were the result of the first pass are melting together with this second pass right here. And you get this very soft blend of the two, which is wonderful.
Look at her take shape. If you're just joining us, you're watching Marvel's How to Draw live with artist David Nakayama drawing Cersei in her costume inspired by Marvel Studios' Eternals, which is coming to theaters this Friday. And of course, Cersei is playable in Marvel Strike Force. She appears in this costume in the mobile game. She's, as I said, playable now. Marvel Strike Force is a turn-based squad RPG where you can team up your superheroes or supervillains against enemy threats. And there is a special Eternals event that is happening this Friday, November 5th through November 19th. And during the event, you'll have the chance to recruit Cersei for your team. You can also look forward to another Eternal being available, which is Icarus. And as for Cersei's powers in the game, I think this is really fun. Cersei copies her enemies' positive effects, and when she's with her Eternal ally Icarus, she also can turn those effects against their enemies. So I think that's a really fun play on the way her powers work. I also love these games because when you get to team up, if you have two Eternals and you team them up, a lot of times there'll be a really sort of cool functionality between the two of them, and it's a really fun way to get to play the game. And in fact, we have a special look at Cersei and Icarus in Marvel Strike Force, so let's take a look at that right now. Heck yeah, Cersei looks so powerful. I can't wait to add her to my squad. If you're just tuning in, we're watching Marvel artist David Nakayama drawing Cersei inspired by Marvel Studios' Eternals, who is now available in Marvel Strike Force. We can continue taking some questions from our audience. If you want to interact with us and hang out with us, please drop your questions, comments, love over in the chat or in the comments, and I will do my best to facilitate those for you over to David. Look at how incredible she looks. I can't believe how quickly she's coming together already.
Thank you. Yeah, we're getting close to the last couple of color beats here. You can see she's not complete. There's no really face yet, but when those final thin lines go in, it suddenly pops into focus. It's really the coolest part of any drawing, I think.
It's really so impressive. We have a question over from Twitch. James Kuo Draws says, "Hi David, you mentioned bringing pages to conventions to show editors. Do you remember what it was in those sample pages you drew and what skills that you demonstrated that helped you?"
Yeah. So I guess sort of the theory I was working under is that editors want to see your ability to draw everything, and also to be able to tell a story from panel to panel. So I went in with three-page stories, each with a different character in a different setting, so I could show off, one would be Spider-Man, for example, and that's a different kind of hero than the Hulk. So the next thing would maybe be Hulk for 3 pages, and one would be in the city, one would be in the desert. That you were trying to show as much as possible. But also, it's important to have those 3 pages, one to the next, so you can see that continuity of storytelling. An editor, I think, I can look at that and in 3 seconds be able to tell, if you can tell a story, and if you're doing it with style, if you're doing it with quality. It doesn't take much, I don't think. That's the amazing thing about art, right? Like, you can't do that with writing sample. It's going to take some time to analyze that. But art, you can tell right away.
You mentioned Spider-Man, and I have heard from artists that he's quite a lot of work for the simple fact that his whole body is inking because he's covered in webs. Is there a character that you think is particularly hard to draw but that you enjoy?
Well, it's kind of going back to what we were saying before. Like, modern comic characters are the hardest to draw. Like, Cable springs to mind. Like, Cable's amazing, super fun to look at, but a hell of a time to draw, pardon me. Spider-Man is hard. There are a lot of webs, for sure, but once you learn how to do it, it's really there's no it's not the hardest, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. Like, it's still just stuff mapped onto a plain human figure. That's a lot easier than having to draw a bunch of gear.
Right, right. And Custom Fig 777 on YouTube would like to know if you have any tips for drawing heads.
Heads are like any part of the body. It takes time to figure it out, but it's really just about learning the sort of base structure, right? You can imagine the back of a skull as a sphere, and you can imagine the front plane of a face as sort of a flat shape that you can map things onto. In fact, you're probably aware of these grids that artists use. Draw a line right down the middle and across the exact center, and you get a lot of information about where the eyes are going to go or the nose are going to go, for example. It gets more complicated. You can drop lines down from the center of the eyes to get the edge of the lips. It's all gridded out, surprisingly mathematically, across the face. Once you've got that down, then the trick is putting it in 3D. I think the way anime, I keep going back to anime today, but the way anime and manga artists do it is actually really fascinating, because it seems simple and it's flat, but they create the illusion of 3D depth in like the fewest lines possible. So it might, to me, when you look at that and understand how they're doing that, it might be able to help you understand how to even think about it in 3D, and no matter what style you're using, it could be helpful.
You mentioned sort of using those basic shapes, which you see a lot when people start sketching out their sort of underdrawing. Do you always go back to sort of those circles and lines in the same way every time?
I think what it is you're in your head imagining these shapes in 3D. So, for example, like her arm coming at us, imagine that cylinder, you'd be seeing the front end of it, and all the circles going around it would be wrapping around this way. This part of the arm right here is almost coming, half towards us. It's not being shown on the side the way this arm is. This arm, we're seeing the full length of it almost from the side. This one is foreshortened and coming at us. So being able to manipulate that cylinder in your head is pretty much the trick to making these things work.
I give it to you. I really, really do. There's so much to this process. We have a question coming in from Twitch from SpurFan27, who said, do the colors that your markers absorb that you've already laid down ever cause you problems, or are you just careful not to touch certain colors again?
Gosh, the particular colors I'm using, I got based on talking to people who do this. Copic actually puts out a book about how to color with Copics. I'm using those very same color combinations here. It just works. So I have, for example, E21, Soft Sun for the dark, and I have R000, Cherry White for the light, and later on I'll put in just a touch of E93 Tea Rose to get a little bit of that pink subsurface red in her skin tone.
Now, I know we're on sort of a limited timeline today while we're live, but is there a way that you work in which do you prefer to sort of let your colors dry if you're coloring traditionally in between? If you were, say, going to color Cersei with a bunch of red, which would be almost seasonally appropriate, but not appropriate for what she actually looks like, would you wait for it to dry down before you added in a contrasting color like that?
Fortunately, one great thing about these pens, alcohol markers such as Prismas or Copics, is that they kind of dry instantly. I don't, I guess there's certain situations where you could smear them, but it would be really hard to make that mistake. They're pretty user-friendly in that way.
There you have it. From Twitch, we have a question. What is a great way to practice shading planes of the face? And also, awesome work, Dave.
Thank you. Great way to practice planes of the shape, or of the face, rather, is The first thing you'll want to do is, you have one of your books to look at, and it'll show a diagram that shows the face from different angles. Front, side, three quarters, up, down, whatever. The idea is that you want to practice each one and start setting up those connections in your brain about what changes as the face or the head moves in different directions. So eventually, you'll realize, oh, if it turns to the side, then that eye that's sort of turned away from us gets shorter. You'll sort of start making those connections. Or likewise, when the head tilts up, now I see the nostrils of the nose, whereas I wouldn't at all if it's tilted down. So you start to make these, these little moments of understanding. And like we were saying before, those moments build, and soon you have this whole toolbox of tips that you recall each time you do it. And when you have enough of them, it looks like you know what you're doing.
Well, you certainly know what you're doing. In fact, let's take a closer look at your beautiful work there as you continue to color Cersei. Hello, if you're just joining us, artist David Nakayama is drawing Cersei from Marvel's Strike Force in her costume inspired by Marvel Studios' Eternals, which is in theaters this Friday. Let's talk a little bit about Cersei from the film Marvel Studios' Eternals. I can't wait for folks to get a chance to see it on the big screen. It's gonna look beautiful. I can't wait. So the Eternals, of course, are heroes from beyond the stars who have protected Earth since really the dawn of mankind. The Eternals are an ancient, immortal group of beings that have been working on behalf of the Celestials, who are the architects of existence. Of course, Cersei is one of the Eternals. And the Celestials sent the Eternals to Earth thousands of years ago to protect humankind from dangerous beasts called the Deviants. Cersei uses her superpowers, which are the ability to manipulate matter. With just a touch, she can take any non-sentient material and shift its makeup, which is very beautiful to see on the screen. And of course, Cersei over the centuries has really fallen in love with humanity. And now in the present day has become a museum curator Also, over the centuries, she's been so very close to her eternal ally, Icarus. Uh, and so when the Deviants reappear, of course, they have to regather the team for one final mission for the Eternals. Be sure to go and get your tickets now to see the film only in theaters November 5th, this Friday. And right now, David Nakayama is continuing to work on Cersei here. What are you focusing on right now, David?
The moment has finally arrived. So we're putting in those detail marks that really make this thing come alive. Laid in flat colors before to suggest general shapes, and now we're getting very specific about particular grooves in the armor. She has a very cool, I guess, astrological, celestial design, circles and geometric forms that flow over the figure. A lot of circles on her, in particular. So I'm trying to lay those out as best I can. And this is that special moment in the drawing where things just sort of snap together and you feel like things look 3D.
Now, some of those shapes look like they might not have been on the original underdrawing. How scary is it to have a colored drawing that's nearing finished and then to start sort of inking over the top?
It is a little bit, especially when you're drawing by hand. It feels a little bit like trapeze without the net. I just have to hope that it all comes together. I hope I don't screw up this face at the last moment, but fortunately I've done it a few times, and practice is what gives me confidence that I can bring this home.
Now, of course, you can interact with David. If you have questions, comments, feel free to drop those in the chat or down in the comments. I'll do my best to facilitate and read those to David to the best of my ability. So feel free to join us here on Marvel's How to Draw. If you're just joining us, David Nakayama is drawing Cersei, inspired by Marvel Studios' Eternals, and she is coming to Marvel Strike Force. You should recruit her for your team on the free mobile game. It's free to download on the Google Play Store or on the Apple App Store. Wow. So do you tend to finish coloring the face last?
I don't know why I did that. That was actually probably a terrible idea. It's the face is the most important part, right? Maybe someone could forgive if I screwed up the leg or something, but the face is the focus of our attention. So probably it should have been first. I guess subconsciously I'm a little intimidated by that, and so I'm like maybe putting it off too long. But here we go. Here comes the face.
I have absolute faith in you. I know you'll do a beautiful job. We have a question here from Twitch from a very long name that is very beautiful, who asks, manual coloring or digital coloring, which one do you recommend?
It's good to know both, but I definitely prefer digital. You just have so many more tricks that are possible in digital. In particular, in Photoshop, there's this thing called Liquify, and if you've used Photoshop, you probably know about it. But it's just like you can smooth things a little bit, in any direction. So there's always that moment in the drawing where you're like, darn it, I wish that thing was a little bit smaller, or I wish this thing moved a little to the left. Well, in Photoshop you can do that, and that's irreplaceable. That's my favorite part about Photoshop.
A very forgiving medium, Photoshop.
Yeah.
So at what point did you start to switch more fully to digital, since you started so traditionally?
It was exactly the moment that I joined the video game industry. So I had been doing a lot of sequential for Marvel, and I got a job in video games, and they don't do pencil, ink, and color in video games. I found out very quickly on the first day. So I had a sort of battlefield trial by fire, learn how to Photoshop real quick, because they expected your art to be finished in color, and that really just changed everything for me. After that, it was, I built up this new set of tools that were sort of different from comics. I should add, along the way, as I was doing video games, I missed comics, and I found myself angling for cover jobs or little things that I could do here and there, and try to keep one foot in comics. And I'd come home from my video game job and do comic work, and I just sort of realized, well, that's because my heart is still there. I still want to do comics, and when the opportunity came up to just go full freelance, that's what my heart told me I had to do. And so when I came back full time to work in comics and freelance illustration, I brought all these tools from video games, in particular the digital process.
Now I'm really excited for everyone to see this face. So I think let's kind of zoom in here and take a closer look as you work on Cersei's face. Welcome back. If you're just joining us, you're watching Marvel's How to Draw Live, presented by Marvel Strike Force. And we're here with artist David Nakayama, who is drawing Cersei for us today. She's wearing her costume from Marvel Strike Force, inspired by Marvel Studios' Eternals, which is in theaters this Friday. And of course, we're looking at Cersei, how she appears in Marvel Strike Force today. You can go and try to recruit her for your team. Marvel Strike Force, of course, is a turn-based squad RPG where heroes and villains are able to be put together on a squad to take on enemy threats. The game is free to download on the Google Play Store or on the Apple App Store. And there is a special Eternals event happening beginning November 5th through the 19th of November. During the event, you'll have the chance to recruit Cersei. Also, look out for her Eternal partner, Icarus, who is coming to the game. And as for her powers, I think this is very cool. She is able to copy her enemies' positive effects. And then when she's also teamed up with her ally Icarus, she can then also turn his effects against their enemies, which is very, very cool. Definitely look out for both of them in the game November 5th through the 19th for that Eternals event. And in fact, let's take another look at Cersei and Icarus in Marvel Strike Force. Oh, yes, look at Cersei go. And of course, we're here with David Nakayama, who is drawing Cersei. So where are you now with your work here on Cersei?
We're really bringing it home. This is the last couple of steps here. It's bells and whistles, icing on the cake at this point. I am putting in some subtle grays to help make the green areas feel just a little bit rounder. And after that, there's going to be some white details that will further make things pop. And finally, that energy effect at the end, which will also light the edge of her outfit. So that's pretty much what remains. But I'm feeling pretty good about the face didn't get screwed up, thank goodness.
Well, and to that effect, over on Twitch, Trusty2750 said, "How are you not making mistakes?"
Oh, I am.
Very real.
You may have noticed a second ago when I was trying to add pink detail on the face, it unexpectedly had some black on it, and it added some darkness there that I didn't want. So I am making mistakes for sure, and all I can do is try to fix them up as best as possible. That can happen in the very last stage where I use a white pen to restore things that should be white back to white. So we'll get there. But I'm glad I'm fooling you into thinking I'm not making mistakes.
Every mistake is an opportunity. That's what they say.
There you go. That's what it is.
There are no mistakes in art. So over on Twitch, our friend asks, "You really work with attention to detail. Is that what Marvel expects from illustrators?"
I do like to think that Marvel's got the best artists in the business. You know, I'm astounded sometimes by what I see coming out of the books I'm buying from Marvel. I'm just trying to do my part to do the coolest art that I can. In regards to detail, I feel like that is my particular thing. Like, I really have gravitated toward drawing hyper-detailed single characters more than, you know, like the full war scene or something like that. I love getting into those details and getting lost in them. And it ends up creating pieces that are, I don't know, I guess poppier. You know, they grab your eye a little bit more, at least for my taste. But that's why I do it.
I do think it's so incredible. I've written books that are illustrated, and I feel like a god. I feel like to be able to say, this is what I would love to see, and then to see someone who can do it, it just feels like the most magical creation. To see an artist bring that vision to life is so incredible and exciting. And you know, you've talked a little bit about, you know, your work on cover art, and you kind of have to be the only storyteller in a piece of cover art. What's the process like when you start thinking about what the story of your cover is going to be?
Oh yeah, that first couple of sketches is so important. It's the only part of the art that I do without, you know, music, podcasts, videos in the background, because I need my whole brain to think about it at that stage. I start off by thinking, okay, well, what's the particular assignment? Who's the particular character? What do I know about that character that can inform the art in an interesting way? So, for example, we just had an Elsa Bloodstone cover announced in the latest Marvel previews, and she's a monster hunter. So I'm thinking to myself, I want a low angle heroic shot, very classic. I want to show her with her shotgun pointed, just slightly off screen, dead monsters behind her, like really communicate real quick in one glance what this character is about. She has a really confident grin on her face. The character, I guess, at the end of the day, is what's driving this. The more you can communicate who this person is in a cool way, the better the cover is going to be.
Well, we're almost to the end of our time. We've got about 15 minutes left.
Okay, let's finish
up. No, it looks wonderful. As you can see, it's really exciting to see this take shape and color and lines. We have a question here from Shade Comics on YouTube who asks, any tips for drawing hands and fingers? I always have trouble drawing them.
Yes, they are tricky. There's just more parts, more bones, than any other part of the body there, and they all move in different directions in 3D, right? Like your fingers, each one of them is pointing in slightly different angles, so that is why they are always the hardest to draw. The best way to get around it is use a mirror. You fortunately have the perfect model on the end of your arm right there. And you can either use a photo if it's something you can't pose you can't hold, or I guess what I'm saying is make use of the fact that you can get that reference. It's not cheating to use reference. Just ask Michelangelo.
That's an interesting thing, because every once in a while, you'll go back and someone will be doing a retrospective on a comic series, and you'll see an artist who's taken a bunch of photos in action sequences, or
right.
like they're holding the cap shield up, or whatever it might be. Do you ever do reference photos of yourself to help you?
I don't, and only for the reason that it's very time consuming to actually do a shoot that way. That is above and beyond, and more power to the artists that do it, but the time spent setting that up, I could probably finish a cover in that time, so it doesn't make much sense for me, but it does create interesting results. So now we're finally getting into those little beautiful details, rim light around particular grooves in her armor. This is the part where people go, whoa, the detail.
And why do you select the certain places that you do?
Going back to that light source, right? I know that her hand is going to be aglow. Maybe it doesn't look like it yet, but it will be, and it means the light is coming this way. So, for example, these little dots right here that I added, those could be little, damages, imperfections in the surface of the armor, or like these grooves. I'm putting that light on the opposite side of where the light source is. And I did it with the color, I did it with the blacks, and now I'm doing it with these whites, and all together it's creating a consistent story about where that light is coming from, and that's why the art will feel like it holds together at the end, because all the individual parts are operating together and moving in the same way.
Well, let's take a little bit closer look. I'm absolutely transfixed, and I want to see it up close. Oh, she looks incredible. If you're just joining us, we're on Marvel's How to Draw Live with David Nakayama, who's drawing Cersei. Um, let's talk a little bit about the process that we've seen today so far. Could you talk us through the stages you've taken this drawing through?
Absolutely. So the first step is the pencil stage. This is when you're figuring out, how is the character posed in a way that communicates their personality or their power set. Then you, I do, some basic lines just to kind of feel like it's contained and there's some edges to it. Then I'll do rough colors, usually the darks first, and then sort of the middles after that. Then, in a weird way, I know it's strange, I go and I put in small details in ink after that. And then finally, the fun part, getting those last details in the white pen and certain special effects like we have over here. But I think we've done it. It's finished.
So, what has been your favorite part of drawing Cersei?
Oh gosh, I think for me it's nostalgia in a way. Like the first Avengers comic that I ever bought was one of those, it's a new team lineup kind of issues, and Cersei happened to be one of the new members joining the team in that issue. So yeah, so I'll always remember her from that. Drawing her here in her awesome updated armor is just feels great, to kind of revisit this character who has been a part of my reading landscape for years.
Yes, brought into this new century.
That's right.
Thank you so much, David. Thank you to everyone who has joined us today. Where can folks find you over on social?
I'm very easy to find under my own name. I'm just at David Nakayama on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and artists. You need to be on ArtStation. No joke. I get lots of jobs from ArtStation. Please find me there as well.
There you go, if you're an artist. And would you mind showing us off your gorgeous drawing here one more time? If you just scan it by us so that we can get a final look.
You can finally get a good read on. I'm going to put it here in this camera so we can actually see it front on.
Oh, there we go. There she is. Let's see if we can. There she is. Wow, she looks phenomenal. Look at all of that incredible work. Oh, thank you so much, David. And everyone, be sure to check out Cersei in Marvel Strike Force. The game is free to download on the Apple App Store and on the Google Play Store. And of course, experience Marvel Studios' Eternals, only in theaters beginning this Friday. And of course, thank you so much to David Nakayama. And this has been Marvel's How to Draw Live. I'm Lorraine, and this is Marvel, your universe.